Today we're making onigiri, or Japanese rice balls. I first had onigiri growing up from a Japanese supermarket, and I was blown away by how convenient this snack was. It was self-contained, wrapped in its own sort of plastic coating, which perfectly maintains the crispiness of the nori surrounding it, and my favorite is sort of a salted salmon center. Today we're going to use some fun ingredients that I think make it even more delicious, and let's walk you through what that looks like. We're going to be using rice from the Rice Factory. The Rice Factory is a place in Westchester, New York, and they also, I think, have a location in Hawaii, and they import rice from Japan. And they have many different varieties of rice, all with different and distinct flavor profiles and characteristics, starch content, grain size. And you go there, or you can order online, and you specify not only which variety you want and the harvest, but you can also specify the milling percentage. So all of their rice starts out 100% brown, and you go in and you specify that you want this rice to be 30% milled, this rice to be 70% milled, and we've settled on our favorite variety, which is 70% milled. So it still has a little bit of that nutty character from the brown rice, but it doesn't take as long to cook. It also has the perfect amount of starch and stickiness. The next thing you'll need is pretty easy to come by from Amazon, which is an onigiri mold and also the onigiri wrappers. You can get away with making your own if you have nori sheets at home. You can wrap them in pieces of aluminum foil and use a piece of tape, but these are quite cheap and easy to come by. Today we're going to be stuffing our onigiri with salmon that I roasted a bit ago, and it's since cooled down. But you could use any filling. Trader Joe's has great smoked trout and salmon in a can that works perfectly for this application. And the last thing that I want to talk about from an ingredient perspective is sushi rice vinegar. Sushi rice vinegar is typically some kind of vinegar, sugar, and in this case, this bottle comes with MSG. This is an awesome product. It's perfect for salad dressings. I find that I use it all the time. It's one of my most used pantry staples. You can make it at home, but this shelf-stable version is really delicious. The last cool thing that we'll be using, and you definitely don't need to do this, we use a donabe to cook rice at home. A donabe is a traditional earthenware pot, pretty unique. It sort of acts as a pressure cooker as well. So here's the top of the donabe. Then underneath the top, there is this pressure cooker style lid, which has some weight to it, and there's two holes in it. And the bottom of the donabe is constructed out of this pretty heavy clay. And the bottom of this donabe is much heavier than some others. This one is specifically made for rice. The cool thing about the donabe is that it absorbs and regulates the heat really well. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna rinse our rice. We're going to measure out the amount of water that we need. We're gonna put it into this pot. We're going to turn it onto medium heat. We are then gonna cover everything back up. And after about 10-12 minutes, we'll start to see steam coming out of this one hole in the lid. And at that point, we know that we need to wait about 30 seconds or a minute, depending on how cooked you like your rice, and turn it off. And then the rice does its thing, it finishes cooking, it finishes its steaming, and because of the thermal mass and the density of the clay, it regulates, but it also holds on to the required amount of heat to perfectly cook your rice. The first step of making rice, at least the way that we do it, is rinsing it. First, you need to get rid of some of the exterior starch, and the reason for this is to get the perfect sticky texture for the final product. The most traditional and probably best way is actually to put the rice into a bowl of water, add a little bit of water, vigorously shake it, and remove the water as quickly as possible, and then do that process a few times until it runs clear. What I have found works just as well is actually just running it underwater with the higher pressure nozzle and just being mindful of how long we're doing it for. So we're watching the color of the water that's coming out of the bottom, and once it's relatively clear, that's when I stop this. It usually takes about 30 seconds. The next step is adding the rice to our donabe and then adding a specified amount of water. When I was first making rice and a little bit more uncomfortable with the consistency that I was getting, I used to weigh it and figured out the ratio that worked for me. Now I can get away with doing volume. It's just a bit easier. For this specific variety of rice and my milling percentage, I do a ratio of about 1 to 1.1 rice to water. Once we add that to the donabe, we're gonna put our pressure lid on top and the final lid as well. We'll then turn it on to medium heat and wait about the 10 to 12 minutes until the steam starts exiting from the front hole. In about 11 minutes, and the steam is starting to come out. So we'll wait for the steam to get a bit stronger and then leave it on for 30 seconds, and we'll turn it off and let it rest for 10 or 15 minutes. All right, the rice is finished steaming, so we'll go ahead and remove the lids. You can see that every grain is perfectly separated. It's got that right sticky texture, but not too much. So what we'll go ahead and do here is transfer this to cool off in a bowl. Next step is adding our sushi vinegar to our rice. Sushi vinegar does a few things to rice. The first thing is it adds a delicious flavor and changes the texture a little bit. There's another interesting component, and coming from an anxious person who cares a lot about food safety, because the sushi vinegar is made mostly of vinegar, it reduces the pH of the rice and will enable it to last a lot longer at room temperature as a result of decreasing the pH. It's a tougher environment for bacteria to multiply and grow. So I read a scientific study about this a while ago, but encourage you to do your own research, but at least makes me feel a little bit better. So we'll add a few tablespoons of sushi rice vinegar to the rice and sort of cut it into the rice. So to wrap our onigiri, we take our nori sheet, and you can see one side will have a pull tab and some writing. We're gonna want to put that face side down onto our cutting board or flat surface. We then will take our mold with one point at the top of the nori sheet. We'll then take a bit of rice, maybe fill it up about a third of the way. Then it's time to include our filling. Spread it out all across the top surface of the rice. And finish by covering that layer of filling with rice. And you don't need to pack this down too much, but once we take the top of our mold, we're going to press a little bit and at the same time pull the mold from the sides. And we're left with our perfect triangle in the center. The next thing you'll do, and this is the hardest part, is you'll take the back half of the nori, fold it up to the top, tuck the sides in like the sides of wrapping a present, and then do the opposite with the flaps that are at the bottom, folding them to the top, and finishing with a small piece of tape holding everything together. And you're left with your perfect onigiri. Quick tutorial on how to eat the onigiri. At the top, you'll see a pull tab. You're gonna pull that down and pull it all the way around through your piece of tape. Pull the two pieces of plastic away from the onigiri, just like that. Flip it and do the same over here. And there you have your perfect onigiri. So delicious. It's got a bit of the sour vinegar character, the delicious filling, the rice is still a bit warm, the perfect snack.